Good evening, friends. Very warm welcome to another edition of the Media Foundation IIC Media Dialogues. These are discussions that we hold about once every quarter on a subject, an important subject related to the media in the country. Today's topic is challenges confronting the Indian language media. This is an important subject, although unfortunately it does not always get due attention. These challenges are, as the panel will, I'm sure, elaborate on, these challenges are manifold, especially so in the case of smaller Indian language publications, be they print or digital. Before we move on to the discussion, please allow me to say a few words about the Media Foundation. The Media Foundation is a non-profit which was set up in 1979 to uphold freedom of expression in the media and in the country. And it was founded by such doyens of Indian journalism as B.G. Varghese, Ajit Bhattacharjee, Kuldeep Nair, N.S. Jagannathan, and so on. Apart from the media dialogues, the Media Foundation also conducts 3 prestigious media awards. The Chameli Devi Jain Award for Outstanding Woman Journalist of the Year, which is a long-standing award. It's been in operation since 1981. And there are 2 newer awards, which they were instituted this year, in fact. The Vishwanath Delhi Press Award for Fearless Journalism and the Kamla Mankekar Award for Journalism on Gender. So I would now like to request Media Foundation Chairperson, Mr. Bharat Bhushan, to please introduce the panel to you and also call them to the dais. Thank you, and over to you,
Bharat. Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank all the working journalists who are present here on a day when India-Pakistan military exchanges are going on. You have found the time to come here, especially some of our panelists who have had to, the last minute, change cover stories of their magazines and write their columns, etc. So thank you very much. The idea for this particular subject of the dialogue actually happened at Mr. Nath's house, Paresh Nath's house. We were discussing what's happening to Hindi press. And the kind of things he said really shocked me, and I said we must have a media dialogue on this because most of us who worked in the English medium press know about the crisis of English media, but we have very little knowledge of what's happening in the regions of India where ownership is completely different, often political ownership, where different kind of digital platforms are coming up. We don't know what the influence of advertisers there is on the media. Is it the same as it is with the national press, etc.? I don't want to sort of go into it. I'm sure our panelists will go into it. So I'll start introducing the panelists, and as I introduce them, they should please come and occupy their place here. So I'll begin with Mr. Paresh Nath. He's the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Delhi Press Group. He started his mission with the group at the age of 22. And has seen Delhi Press rise to become the leading publishing house of India with 33 magazines spread over 10 languages, commanding a readership of over 30 million. So among the Delhi Press's titles are, you would have heard of them, Grihashobha in Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, Kannada, Telugu, Bangla, Tamil and Malayalam. The Caravan in English, Sarita in Hindi, Saras Salil in Hindi and other languages, Mukta Hindi, Champak Hindi, Gujarati, English, Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu. Highlight Genies and Highlight Champs, English. Mr. Paresh Nath, would you please come up on the stage? Mr. R. Prasannan, who's in the middle of writing his cover story for the Week and Malayala Manorama. He is the resident editor of Malayala Manorama newspaper and the Week News magazine in Delhi. He's been writing on defense, national security, foreign policy, politics, law, constitutional affairs, science, current affairs for both publications for the last 35 years. He's reported from several conflict zones from Kargil and Siachen to Afghanistan. He's also reported from Tibet and from China. Prasannan has a special interest in history and archaeology. He has published 2 books, Alexander's Alaknanda in Malayalam and Saving the World from Hitler, India's Battles in World War II in English. Prasannan, thank you for coming this evening. Please come on the stage. Then we have my friend Dr. Samata Biswas, who's flown in from Kolkata. Samata teaches English at the Sanskrit College and University as part of the South Asia Network for Communication, Displacement and Migration. Samata coordinates news stories dealing with migration that have a pan-South Asia focus. Many of them are published in Refugee Watch Online, a blog she coordinates. She's a curator of the short film series Calcutta Migrant City and the producer of a recently completed climate action short film, Friends of Jilipi Bala. Samata holds a PhD, is an active media watcher, flagging caste, gender and displacement related issues in Bengali media. She also regularly writes scholarly and popular articles in Bangla and English. Samata, please come on stage. Yeah. Then we have my friend Mahtab Alam. Mahtab is the former editor of The Wire Urdu, a multilingual journalist and writer. Mahtab writes on issues related to politics, law, literature, and human rights. Mahtab was the founding executive editor of The Wire Urdu. He is managing editor of the Media Fellowships Program at the National Foundation for India. He is winner of several journalist awards, including the Red Ink Award for Excellence in Journalism and the Mahfuzur Rahman Award for Urdu Journalism. He has also held the position of Joint Secretary of the Press Club of India. Mahtab. Then I now invite Vijay Nayak, a very old friend of mine. We've done a lot of reporting together. Vijay is consulting editor of the Sakal Media Group. He's an eminent journalist who writes in Marathi. Vijay has reported on Indian Parliament, politics, foreign affairs for more than 45 years. He's a regular analyst and commentator on TV. As a war correspondent, he's covered the 1971 India-Pakistan War, IPKF operations in Sri Lanka, Kargil conflict. He is a really eminent journalist in the sense that he's convener of the Indian Association of Foreign Affairs Correspondents. I think there's hardly any ambassador or high commissioner in Delhi who doesn't know him, or any foreign correspondent who doesn't know him. He's also a member of the Executive Committee of the Editors Guild of India, formerly its General Secretary also. He's a former member of the Press Council of India, member of India-Africa Editors Forum, and former chairman of the Press Advisory Committee of both Houses of Parliament. He's written 9 books, 8 of them on diplomacy and international affairs, and an award-winning novel in Marathi. And finally, we have our moderator, Professor Vibodh Parsarthi. He's Associate Professor at the Center for Culture, Media and Governance, Jamia Millia Islamia. He's been invited as a visiting professor at University of Queensland, KU Leuven, a Catholic university based in Belgium, University of Helsinki, Lund University, and IIT Bombay. Vibodh maintains a multidisciplinary interest in media policy and industry studies. He co-edited works include the best-selling Platform Capitalism in India and critically acclaimed double-volume Indian Media Economy. Vibodh is also among the founding editorial board members of the journal Platforms and Society and is associate editor of the Journal of Digital Media and Policy. Now I leave all the panelists in the good hands of Vibodh Parsarthi. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this. Thank you all the panelists to make time, and of course everybody in the audience to also make time for this. The biggest question, of course, is if we have a discussion on the media in Indian languages, which language should we have it in? And I think our panelists were extremely generous to allow that discussion in English. Otherwise, most of us may not be able to understand each other. So that I'm really thankful to all of you about this here. I'm wondering if you could just sort of start off with a quick observation by each one of you in terms of what do you see as the defining trait of the particular linguistic news market that you are familiar with. So it's Urdu, Marathi, Hindi, Bangla and Malayalam. Yeah. And then we could then get into the details after that. I mean, what's the defining trait of what you're confronted with almost every day? We can start from Mahtab.
Hindi, we can start.
we can start from Hindi in English, but
okay. Although my expertise is in magazines, not in newspapers, but I do know a little about newspaper business also, because I was long associated with Indian Newspaper Society and Indian language newspapers Association. The problem with Hindi, especially, although we cover almost 70% of the landmass, is that the Hindi speaking or Hindi reading public is gradually reducing in importance. I have started using the word which is little uncommon, is the caste. That the caste has developed of English and non-English, and Hindi is suffering more because of it. Because whatever is being said or written in Hindi is not given that kind of importance which the contemporary or the local English newspaper or English media would get. Apart from that, we have that problem of reaching the readers. The distribution system of most Hindi publications has been little skewed, and people do not want a newspaper to be delivered at home. So that is another. Then the third, of course, is that the talent which is coming to the Hindi newsrooms is not getting that kind of zeal which is needed in any journalistic endeavor. So most of my focus is on these three aspects.
Sure, I think we'll definitely come back to the issue of talent and expertise. Mr. Prasannan, what would you define as the key trait of the Malayalam press?
Malayalam, as you know, unlike Hindi, which has 70% of the geographical reach, as Mr. Nath said, I think we have the smallest geographical reach because it's confined to the small state of Kerala to the southern corner. I don't have to tell you about that. But we have one advantage there because the high literacy rate, so 100% literacy rate gives us a sort of a captive readership, you can say. But just as Mr. Nath said, in the case of Hindi, the readership of Malayalam, but it's not Malayalam alone, the readership of newspapers per se are dwindling across the state, be it in English or be it in Malayalam. So that's a major challenge that we are all facing. But I would also say that the Malayalam media has also found ways of overcoming those challenges or facing those challenges by digitalizing more content and making them available to the readership. But there is no problem of reach at all, even be it the print or in the case of digital, there is no problem of reaching the reader because as I said earlier, we have a captive readership there, and you would be surprised to know that even during COVID, the readership of even the print newspapers didn't go down much in Kerala. Maybe 10 to 15 to 20% it had gone down, and most of the newspapers got back that readership even up to, may not be 100%, but they got back most of their readership back. That was because the newspapers, all of them made a conscious decision not to stop printing. During those 2 years of the crisis, all the newspapers came together and made a conscious decision of not stopping printing. And wherever they could, they tried to reach the reader physically in the morning as in the traditional manner. And that was, I think, one of the biggest success stories of the Indian media in the recent years. I would say that was the regional media or the regional language media, I would say. But of course, we also had a very, very positively inclined government, a government that was, that time at least, positively inclined to helping the newspapers in terms of reach, because it was considered as an essential service along with hospitals and milk and all that. So there was, the newspaper distributor was never hampered or stopped on the way and all that. So that was one good experience. And if I may allow to boast a little also, in fact, many papers, of course, the salaries had to be cut in many newspapers, but I would say my newspaper did not cut even 1 paisa of any employee, and not even chucked any person also out. That was another success story. In fact, as the early days of COVID, when there was this crisis and this concern among the media persons, all of us, even me together and all that, our editors addressed us in groups and assured us not to worry on that count at all. So, but we had to go forth, and that was one success story. So that this is one good experience that we had. But now, post-COVID, yes, as I said, there has been the circulation. We got back most of, I would say 90% of the circulation is back. But there is that general decline in the in readership, be it digital or print. And the other issue that is challenging us is the revenue. Yes, we have good reach. We have, I mean, the acceptability is very high, but then revenue is not coming in the sense that, as Mr. Nath said, there is that caste, this thing, but we would say not among the readers, it's more among the advertisers, because the advertisers still we feel continue to favor, especially the big advertisers who are deep pockets, they continue to favor the English media, be it in print or even digital. And so because they think that the cosmopolitan reader or the metropolitan reader who has much more purchasing, has more purchasing power, and so they tend to favor the English media. That's our experience too. Just in a nutshell, that's what I would say.
Yeah, but we will take home the paradox about very high literacy and yet dwindling readership here. Mr. Naik?
The point we just have mentioned is about the circulation, high literacy and less circulation. I do not really agree with you, because Jeffrey Robbins is one of the
Robin
Jeffrey. He was one of the writers who went into the language media in India, all newspapers, the language newspapers, and he came out with a study saying that the leadership is increasing, and because of the people reading more and more newspapers. I'll give you example of my paper. The paper, when it was taken over by Mr. Pawar, the circulation was 1.45 lakh only. Today it is 13.6 lakhs. Then what happened actually is that most of the newspapers in Maharashtra, they have diversified themselves. It's not only the print media, but they have gone into the digital media. They've gone into having the different kind of visual media also, their own channels. And now it is so that the Marathi media is doing very well now. And I was just talking to the Ranade Institute chief journalism in Pune. He says that the master's degree has got about 50 students who are coming there, English and Marathi also, as well as the other courses. There are about 100 journalists are there getting education, you see. And he says 80% of the journalists who pass through these courses, whether it is a diploma or it is a degree, they get into the profession, which means that there is a prospect for the journalist to get into media, but it's not only one media, print media. Earlier we had only print media, but later on we are having different kind of media, and digital is there. Now the people have YouTube also, so they can have their own kind of a podcast, or whether they can have their own channels also. These channels have proliferated in Maharashtra in a very big way. I know that people who are working in Marathi journalism in Delhi, they left Delhi. They went to Mumbai and started their own channel, which means that there is a success and there is a space for the channels. I was told that there is a political communication is another branch of it. So that also political communication, people are going to political communication, they are going to advertisement, they are going to public relations business also. Those who get into the colleges of journalism, they have different kind of openings actually. And with that, as I said earlier, that the circulation is increasing because more and more people are getting educated and literate. What we did, you see, as an experience was that we put up our newspaper in the villages, so that not only one person can read, because people are not ready to purchase everything. But there would be about 10 people, 15 people. Early morning, they would go and read Sakal. So we tried this experience. Second experience we tried was that to have an agro daily. It's the only one daily agro daily in India. Now, when we started giving little more politics into agro daily, the farmers came complaining to us and said that no, we do not want any kind of politics in it. You see. We want only agriculture, experiments, hybrid things. You see what is happening in agriculture, and that has become very, very popular. So I feel that that population of Maharashtra is more than 10 crore, and there are more than 14,000 newspapers in Maharashtra. Apart from that, there are magazines also, and the papers, of course, as you know, that Link was and Patriot was related to the left parties at that time also. Now it doesn't remain, you see. But in Maharashtra, you find very interesting scenario, you see, that Balasaheb Thackeray had his own Samna. And a Samna, once you write an editorial, it was printed, it was printed and it was commented upon in papers like Hindustan Times and Times of India for all these years. So the influence is there, you see, but influence is divided. Now, if you look at Tarun Bharat, it is the BJP, the kind of a thing. If you look at the Samna, it is the Shiva Sena, you see. And other papers, like very important papers like Lok Satta or Mahta Times and Lokmat and Sakal, you see. These are the most important papers in Maharashtra. Their circulation is increasing, and I think this is because of diversification of their own profession. Only thing which I would like to say, because Bharat referred to advertising. And advertising has taken a toll of a news nowadays, you see. Because at one time I remember you could print a news of 400, 500 pages, 400, 500 words, you see. Nowadays they say that the ad is more important than the news. And even the articles also earlier were about 1200 words or 1300 words. They have been reduced to now 600 to 700 words now, you see. So you have to concise and precise, write about it, and therefore you lose a kind of freedom, little freedom, you see, because you wanted to say something but you couldn't say something. So that kind is happening, and advertisement has eaten into the journalism in a very big way. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I think the point about finance and revenues and about one of political ownership, I'm sure we'll come back to that later on. Dr. Biswas, key sort of traits for somebody who doesn't know what the Bangla media is.
Okay, so to begin with, Bangla media is not only from West Bengal. There is Barak Valley in Assam, where there are several very, very important Bengali language newspapers and other media outlets that work, which is the biggest town being Silchar. There is Tripura as well, where also again there are several Bengali newspapers. But what I understand is that in both Assam and in Tripura, the newspapers are more concentrated about their specific issues and national issues, and to some extent Bangladesh news, because they are very closely neighboring, and also because Bangladesh is a constant source of anxiety as well as identity. But if we think about West Bengal, there, like Vijay Nayak ji said, the media scape is extremely diverse. Most big and small newspapers have online presence. So it could be like the Communist Party of India's newspaper Kalantor, which just sends its friends and subscribers the newspaper as a PDF, and it is also printed. And then you have places, the houses like Anandabajar Potrika Limited, which has its own print newspaper, its own English print newspaper, its own television channel, its own app, and a completely separate digital imprint as well, which is also a news outlet. So in this extremely complex and multimodal news media scape, I think there are two things that I will connect with what both Prasannan said and Vijay Nayak ji said, that in terms of reading culture, what you just talked about, pasting Sarkar in other parts of the city and village, this has been happening in Bengal for the longest time. So the Communist Party newspapers do it, so Ganashakti Kalantor does it, but also the Trinamool newspapers do it. So Jago Bangla Khobor 365 also do it. But do people stand and read them as much as they used to? Or earlier, I think all of us have been to public libraries, and we've seen how people who get ready for competitive examinations obsessively read the many newspapers that public libraries subscribe. Do
they read them anymore? They don't, because they are getting all their news online digitally. So while there is a very complicated and a lot of different kinds of news media working, but in terms of reading news media, I think Bengal follows the same trend that other places are following. However, there's more disaggregated data that's available. For example, Bangla websites like, say, Hindustan Times Bangla Digital is read only by people who use, and you can get this information from Google Analytics, it's read only by people who use Android phones, so not by people who use iPhones. So the caste system that Paresh Nath ji was talking about is also present in terms of the consumption of news. And it's also present in terms of the employment of the people who go into such media publishing houses and other media fora. So I talked to quite 4 institutes that teach mass comm journalism and multimedia production. Of that, the public institutions said that their Bengali medium students who come in to study mass comm and journalism are not necessarily recruited. In fact, all newspapers said that they do not recruit students who come from journalism background. They want to recruit students who come from general degree backgrounds. Especially Anandabajar will not recruit anyone who does not have a first class BA or an MA degree. At the same time, you do have people who are in elite institutions like St. Xavier's College, St. Xavier's or expensive institutions like Sister Nivedita University, where the courses are really expensive. Even then there's a division. People who come from English language backgrounds are sons and daughters of highly placed employees, have a cultural capital and connections which can help them get ahead in life, do get jobs in national newsrooms. People who come from Bangla medium backgrounds are probably also doing these courses, having taken out a heavy loan, do not get the same kind of jobs. They do end up in often in digital media platforms, small digital media platforms where the payments are irregular, turnover extremely high. So I think if one word is to describe the Bengali mediascape right now, it would be, it is a precarious position for people who are producing media.
Okay, thanks for that. Mahtab, defining traits. I know you are trilingual journalist. You have English, Hindi, and Urdu. But
so
Urdu
I'll start with the
yeah.
Urdu.
Yeah.
So the defining traits of Urdu media, if I have to say, I mean, first we need to understand it's basically linked to the Urdu itself. I mean, if you look at the Urdu itself, the readership is declining. And over a period of time, it has become a language of novelty and emotion instead of language of, say, utility and information. And that's why the newspapers, and I'll be largely talking about newspapers and magazines, and that's because there is hardly any professional digital media platform in Urdu today which is published from India. So that is the case. And there are issues which are faced by media in general. For example, the readership, the issue of talent, attracting talent and retaining talent, all these issues are there. But there are some specific issues. For example, if you look at the news production cycle, usually most of the newspapers in India, Urdu newspapers in India, rely on a news agency called UNI, United News of India, Urdu Service. And what happens there is, and having worked in a digital platform, Urdu edited Urdu digital platform, by the time you receive the wire copy, the news is already very late. And that happens because the news will come first in English, then it will be translated in Hindi, and then from Hindi it will be translated in Urdu. So that is a problem, and that is a problem, and that is, I don't think that is something new. I have been reading, I have seen the archives of newspapers, Urdu newspapers, over 200 years, 150 years. This reliance on translation is not new. It was always there. But what has happened, given the lack of utility of Urdu language, and I was very happy to see the recent Supreme Court judgment in which it was recognized that Urdu is not, we are often told Urdu is not just language of Muslim. I mean, that is a reality, that is a fact, but it is also a reality whether we like it or not. If today Urdu is surviving, it's surviving because of one community. There are not many readers, there are not many supporters of Urdu in other but that is not the only thing. The other thing is, what I was saying, that I was very happy to see that the court recognized the fact that it is also a medium of communication. And that's why I said the signboard in Urdu means that it is for communication purpose. And that is somewhere lacking. If you look at the newspapers or say Urdu publication, even digital, there are plenty of them. It's not that it is not there. I can name at least 20 websites which are there, but same thing, cycled, recycled, or things which were published in BBC Urdu, say, which is largely about Pakistan. Most of the production is happening as of now, is happening there, either in London or Pakistan. Recently, I mean, and until recently, Voice of America also, and then Deutsche Welle. So all these things are there. So so I think I'll not talk about the talent and other thing as of now. We can talk about it later. One last thing I will add, and this is regarding readership, is the Urdu reader. A person who can read Urdu can also read at least one or two other language. And that's why unless you are giving something new to him or her or them, that person is not going to buy or subscribe. If you are giving translation, by the time you will provide that translation, they have already read it in English, or say in Telugu, in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, or say in Maharashtra. One of the largest consumption of Urdu news is not happening in UP. It is happening in Maharashtra. It is happening in Bihar. And it is also happening in parts of, in Bengal, for example, in Kolkata, in Asansol, and other places. So, yes.
So in a sense, Urdu is a kind of a regional language in a very non-regional kind of way.
Yeah, it's not that's the
How would you describe it
in
the terms that we are using
now? That's a challenge also, because so Punjabi will have and that's why it is very easy to say convince a state to provide all kind of support, Malayalam, Marathi, and all. The problem with Urdu is it is declining, its readership is declining. If you look at the census data, 2021, which is the last census we had, now it has reached to 7th position. Earlier, it was on 6th position. So that is there. But even that number, having it is 7th largest spoken language in India, but that is scattered. You will have, even in Tamil Nadu, in a place called Vanembadi, you will find Urdu readers and Urdu speaking. So that is a challenge. There's no, pocket, that kind of thing.
In that sense, it seems to be pretty much close to English in terms of the diffusion.
But the kind of influence English has...
Yeah, we'll come to influence later on, yeah. But in terms of pure diffusion, it's not something which is regionally bound. But I think in the next round, we'll talk a little bit about media labor itself, because there are a large number of journalists here. All of them may not have the same good story that you talked about in terms of Kerala. And maybe I could start with you itself, Mahtab, that this is following from what Samata said. What's the kind of typical background of those who enter the field of Urdu journalism? Clearly what she said was, you To enter Bangla journalism, you need a BA first class, MA first class
Anandabhajar.
in Anand Patrika, which means none of us might qualify for a job in the ABP, which is fine. But as far as the Urdu press is concerned, where are these people coming from? Yeah.
Largely from two backgrounds. One, either they have a degree in Urdu literature, or they went to some madrasa and then did some, say, course. So these are there are Urdu journalism courses. In Delhi itself, there are at least 3, if I'm not mistaken. One part-time course in JNU, which is a long running. Another in Jamia, which is a MA course or PG diploma course. And then we have 1-year PG diploma at IIMC. Now the problem is, in all 3 places, not a single person who have say newsroom experience, have been editor or running a digital platform, a kind of thing, they are teaching or they are part of designing kind of thing. So that is there. The background, what it does, I mean, and I'm not blaming them, and they should not be blamed, that why only people from certain background who are running these shows. Because we keep hearing that Urdu newspapers are very emotive. And these are the people who call themselves Urdu walas, but they hardly invest in Urdu. The thing Paresh ji was talking about, or that most of these non-English, I mean, when it comes to subscribing, supporting newspapers or digital platforms, most of the Urdu walas will subscribe say non-Urdu publication, or buy, partly because that has more information, but partly because they don't want to invest, because they feel there is nothing nothing worth investing. And that's why, I mean, the only people who are left are these people who have command over language. Most of the people, including me, we don't have such a command over Urdu language. But on the other hand, what happens that since they don't, they are not aware about other things which are essential to journalism. And that's why the content you will see, it will reflect. So there are newspapers which will represent a particular school of thought amongst Muslim. There are websites which you read, you will know that if you want to read about Deobandi, say, sect, this is the website you go. If you I'm not saying this is exclusive to Urdu. This is everywhere. I mean, if you want to read about CPM, you have to read this. If you want to read about, say, BJP, you have to read Dainik Jagaran. So all that thing is there. But even then, in Hindi and other languages, Indian languages, you will have more number of people coming from different subjects or different academic background. Someone from political science, someone from economics, someone from other subjects, and then doing journalism, which is not largely the case, especially in last few years. And that's also happening, and that's why every year you will see an appeal from IIMC that so many seats are vacant in IIMC. No, there are no takers of Urdu journalism course. Why there should be they should be taking admission in that course when there are no jobs? The biggest employer of Urdu, say the people who knew Urdu or who were interested in Urdu journalism, was ETV. But that has also shut. I mean, Urdu service is not there. TV 18, that is over. Zee Salam, which is again Zee's Urdu thing, but everything is done in Devanagari. So there is no use of knowing Urdu. There is no value addition of that. So there are no jobs, and also there are no one to train, to teach things, how to write explainer, how to do data journalism, all these things. Even at the places which in the university, which is built in the name of or established in the name of Urdu, Maulana Azad National Urdu University, they have a big department, mass communication department, but most of the people working in that department, most of the theses produced are in non-English, non-Urdu. So that
So
is
this
there.
sort of comes back to, in a sense, what Mr. Nath began with, is this kind of the schism that you're saying between the dominant language and the regional language. Do you think that's has grown over the years in Hindi press, A, and B, do you hire people who have got a MA first class in Hindi?
You see, my
Text press?
concern actually is not about only Hindi, it's about all Indian languages and all Indian language publications. Because what is happening now is that any educated family is sending his young toddler to an English medium public school. After 12 years of English medium public school, he doesn't know his mother tongue very well. He can't write, he can't read. And after that, if he graduates into anything, college education, even if he takes up political science or sociology or science or mass communication, he will never be able to use his mother tongue as the first language. Side by side, his command on English is also not very good, unfortunately. Because while he was going into an English medium school and is spending about 4 to 5 hours studying in English, as soon as he steps out of the school, he starts speaking in the mother tongue. Now, which he doesn't read, which he doesn't write. Now that, according to me, is the biggest challenge, either for, both for readers and also for the talent which will come to publishing houses. English will have a good day because people who are very good in English will somehow be able to write, and at least there will be a cream which will be able to write good, and English publications will always have better economic status. That is why I was using the word caste, that even though the circulations, everybody said that is growing up, or is at least stable in languages, the revenue is going down. It is because the advertiser, the person who is sitting in the post of giving an advertising in marketing manager, he doesn't know the language which is his or her own mother tongue. So according to him, the data is to be given, or they're only dependent on data or the look of the publication. So that gives a problem. As far as the recruitment is concerned, the kind of people who would take up job in a Hindi publication are not the cream of the society. And we have to just do with them and train them very hard and tell them each and every step how to write a good story. It becomes very difficult. Translation from English to Hindi or any language to Hindi is also very difficult. So these challenges are there. Hindi publications, Hindi newspapers are doing, but look at the cover prices in India. What are the cover prices compared to anywhere in the world? Why are our cover prices of newspapers so low? Why can't we spend 15 rupees, 20 rupees or 30 rupees for a newspaper? You see, I'll tell you an interesting thing. When Sarita was started in 1945, Can you imagine what will be the cover price of that magazine? It's small size, Reader Digest size, 144 pages. What will be the cover price? Any idea? You will say some annas. It was 1 rupee. It was 1 rupee in 1945. And it was raised because of some losses. It was even raised to 1 rupee and 8 annas for 3 years. Then it was brought back to 1 rupee because we started getting advertising. But is it possible for me to sell the same magazine for 300 rupees today? Is it possible?
Not at all.
Is it not? It is not possible. But why? Because at that time, the elite of Hindi-speaking people were reading Hindi. Now the elite of Hindi-speaking people are not reading anything, not even English. Not even English. That is why the English newspaper is cheaper than the Hindi newspaper. Can you imagine Economic Times selling for 6 rupees? And the headline will be that the company has, such and such company has invested 2,500 crores in something. And the reader is not ready to pay more than 6 rupees. On Saturday and Sunday, when they increase it to 10 rupees, the circulation goes down. But this is not a issue only of journalism. It is a larger sociological issue. What will happen to the country? How will we communicate with each other? Newspapers and media is the vehicle to get you the ideas, get you the direction where the country will go. But we will not be able to do because we will not be able to write it properly. In which language? We can't write it in English because people who have come from English medium public schools cannot read properly. Their language has changed. The language which is being used on mobile is a different language than which is used on a newspaper. It has so many acronyms, so many things, so many emojis, and newer emojis are coming. This Netflix film Adolescence is a good idea on that. I mean, parents and police officers say, what is the meaning of the language which you are using? But that is the language of everyone. I mean, we may be unaware, but that is the language of everyone who is using digital platform. How will we bring it to a newspaper? That language, whether from English or Hindi. Now, among Hindi, I have started saying that people cannot write even in Hindi on a mobile 2 lines. So they send a voice message. They'll send a voice message. They can't write Hindi, they can't write English, so they'll send a voice message.
But that voice message is in bad Hindi or bad English?
It is a mix of Hindi and English.
Yeah, I mean, this is significant, but I think it's not that completely new. I mean, the couple of points. I mean, the first press commission didn't talk about this fact about that the purchasing power of the English reading audience is something that attracts the ads to that.
Yes.
It also talked about the, at that point of time, declining quality of writing. Yeah, I think we always feel that the writing has declined in our time the most. And that's very much actually a kind of a human tendency here. To pick up another part of that, Mr. Naik, is that, I mean, amongst those who are able to write and have the zeal, some of them, of course, are not full-time journalists. They are stringers there. Maharashtra being a very large state, amongst the most urbanized states in India, which would explain some of the revenue figures you were talking about earlier. What are the kind of challenges faced by journalists and stringers in Maharashtra, given the fact that the press business seems to be relatively more buoyant compared to other states?
See, we were talking about how the journalist gets into newspaper. what kind of qualification he must have. I remember that if you go back to about 30, 40 years, the persons or young man who was not getting any employment at anywhere was told, let us join journalism. Because it doesn't have any kind of qualification. So that was the time. So
I thought they were coming all joining universities at that time.
no. But that was a long time
Law
back.
faculty was that. Okay. I stand corrected on that. Yeah. Okay, not so. Journalism was number 2. Law faculty was number 1.
Okay. So that was the problem. But what I feel that in most of the universities, they have now courses, diploma courses, and the degree courses in Maharashtra, of course, where the young men after graduation join them, and after getting a training or a degree, they try to get into a newspaper or a channel or like that. You see now. So it depends on the luck actually, whether you get into newspaper, which kind of newspaper, what is the policy, and all those things. But what I feel is that there is a scope, and that scope is there. Therefore, the younger generation is attracted towards journalism. If you look at today's situation, it's very bad. Of course, we used to say that ours was a golden time, and today is not that golden time because you have to be committed to certain things actually. So that is one of the problems. If you join a newspaper, you have to go according to its policy. What kind of policy it adopts? You see, let's say a paper like Tarun Bharat in Maharashtra. So Tarun Bharat it has got multiple editions in Maharashtra, but the ideology is a BJP or RSS. You see, that kind of a there. If you come to the elite newspapers like Lok Satta, Maharashtra Times, or Lokmat, Sakal, they are a different kind of papers where the Indian Express owns Lok Satta. Then Times of India owns the Maharashtra Times. You see. Then there is a paper like the Lokmat. It is owned by an industrialist, owned by, they say that we are all journalists. From Darada onwards, everybody says that we are journalists actually. So they are there. And a paper like Sakal, which is published from official place like Pune, but it travels to Mumbai, and then it travels to about 11 different destinations in Maharashtra. You see. Why? Because the person who started Sakal in 1932 had an idea that we should get one edition in 26 districts of Maharashtra, all 31 or 26 districts of Maharashtra, which was not possible. But then there was one experiment was there, that about 10 or 15 years back, Sakal wanted to publish an English magazine which is devoted to international affairs. And that particular magazine was edited by Dilip Padgaonkar, late Dilip Padgaonkar. It was from Delhi actually, it was being done. The price was 400 rupees per magazine. And who is going to read that kind of a thing actually? As he said, the price of a newspaper at his time was only 1 rupee. Now the daily which is sold, which is a higher price, is Hindu. So it is in the daily as well as the Sunday edition also. So what I feel is that the situation has changed. Newspapers are trying to survive basically now because of financial help from any other quarters actually, and it is very difficult to run a newspaper without any kind of revenue. Therefore, dependence on advertisement all the time. You see. And I know that even if you give a very good news to a newspaper, let us by 10 o'clock or like that, suddenly a big ad will come to the editorial department and the advertisement department. They will say, now this has to go. You keep your story aside, and the advertisement goes there. See. So therefore, I think the situation is, I think it's difficult to explain, but the
about stringers in particular.
Stringers. Now stringers, of course, there are stringers, but their financial position is very bad. Those people who are regulars in the newspapers and employed in newspapers, they are getting good salaries, not very, very big salaries, you see, but they can sustain. But the stringers, of course, their situation is bad because stringers can be removed any time. Number two, that they don't have any accreditation of the state government. So therefore, there is another thing that has happened because the stringers are there, they indulge into another thing, which means that if you are not getting enough money, then you try to influence people or trying to influence politics there and get something from there to survive yourself. So that kind of thing has happened in, I think, across India that has happened. And I feel that the biggest challenge was posed by newspapers few years back, that is after 2010, was a paid news. That was the biggest challenge that was faced by newspapers, where newspapers had become absolutely, nauseating kind of a thing, and the newspaper, the owner and the correspondent who was doing the stories, both of them were getting money. No, this is a malaise. Actually, this happened in India, and after that, slowly things moved, and then there was a election commission inquiry and other things that happened. You see, but whenever the elections come, we have to be very cautious. Which newspaper is doing what, whether they are getting the paid news or not, and how it is displayed there. These are the things which are happening so far as stringers are concerned. As I have said earlier, their financial situation is not different. This is difficult. Therefore, they have to indulge in different kind of professions, you see, which means that they cannot give their time to journalism. They cannot give time to their own stories, actually. See. So that is a difficult situation so far as stringers are concerned.
What about in Kerala? I guess all newspapers are not as benevolent as you are.
No.
So what's the situation of stringers in Kerala, given the fact that you have a large number of relatively small newspapers as well there?
Yes, very true. Kerala has a very large number. There are very few of us who are the so-called the big papers and all that, but we are not owned by any other corporate. These are media houses. Traditionally, most of them are 50, 100, even 130 years old and all that. So these are very legacy institutions of Kerala, which has, luckily surviving also with continuing the old the journalism in the best, I would say, best as it can be make it. But yes, there are a lot of these small newspapers, but small newspapers also, some of the older ones are also struggling with dwindling circulation. As I said earlier, yes, the circulations are going down, and of course now, if at all anybody claims that his circulation is going up, that is actually a dog-eating dog phenomenon. That is, you are getting circulation from the other one. But that's a larger problem that Kerala faces, not only Kerala, but even southern states, which is linked to the issue of delimitation. The populations are going down. The population growth, forget the language speaking. It's not whether Malayalam speakers are going down. It's the state's population is going down. It had come to zero growth, and now it is almost begun at a phase of minus growth, the population. And also the youth, because of lack of good job opportunities and all that, the smarter ones, I would say, those who score good marks in exams and all that, they are also leaving the state, either for higher education elsewhere in India or even Europe and elsewhere. Now, earlier, Kerala always had been a migrating state. Malayalis have always been migrating, you may point out. Yes, but there is a big difference. The earlier migrants, they migrated to the Gulf countries, and they all knew that they were going to come back one day, maybe after 10 years, 20 years, or after making a good pile of money. You are going to come back and settle down back in the state, building a palatial house or whatever and all that, having a big car, and bye-bye. And also, we also used to think, okay, he'll also be buying not only a Mercedes or big car, also buying Malayala, Manorama or my paper, like that. That is going down now, because the youngsters who are going out of the state are not coming back. They are going to Europe, mostly more to Europe and the US, Western destinations, either to join a university there or to get good jobs there, and they are not coming back. In fact, many of them who are concerned about their aging parents who are left behind are even selling their assets or selling their homes and all that, and taking their parents also. So the population is dwindling because of two factors. One is birth rate has fallen, and secondly, because of this migration, the migrants who are not coming back. So this is a major population, but that's a challenge that the state has to face. I wouldn't say it's a newspaper's own the challenge and all that. The other thing, but at the same time, we talked about the new age in which, about the language issues and also the technology and all that. I would say one thing about most Malayalam newspapers is the high adaptability that they have been showing to new technology or even new style of newspaper or readership and all that. I mean, we talked about the purity of language and all that. But I would say, personally, we should not insist on the old style of journalism now. We have to adapt to the new situation. We have to adapt our language, because if the youth understands a different kind of language, better speak to the youth in that language. So Malayalam papers are not shy of using English words in their headlines or even text. And even now, we also realize, most of the newspapers, they realize that you also have to reach out to the younger, even in the sense that I'm younger, I mean not the youth, but the adolescent, to the schools. Because we had Times of India and Hindustan Times and all had school editions. But our school editions are different, because we have our school editions, it may not be a full edition, but we would have a page for the school kids in which the curricular topics are discussed. You will have exam guides in that. The topics are discussed. For example, a science chapter in class 9 textbook, it will be discussed and explained by experts in such a language, because as Mr. Nath mentioned, many of them are going to English medium schools and not understand good, but may not speak good English. But they may speak good Malayalam. In their language, in Malayalam, it is English, the content is explained to them. The other the thing in Malayalam journalism is that one thing is that we are also going into the mohallas. So newspapers, bigger papers have editions in almost every district. We have 15 editions within Kerala itself, and most other papers have 10, 6. So number of editions are going up. Even as circulations are not going up, number of editions are going up because of that. They are willing to take that risk and reach to the reader, because they want the mohalla news, so to speak, and all that. At the same time, they also are not willing to compromise on giving the national news. For example, just now when I came in and somebody was asked, Malayalam newspapers are celebrating the war today. Yes, today my paper and the second biggest paper, we devoted 8 pages to the circulation. Every detail of it and to the conflict that is going on. Every detail of it, which even you won't find in the Times of India or the Hindu or Indian Express. We have the papers. Not only my paper, I'm talking about the 3-4 major papers that I saw in the morning. They are all giving these kind of details. So without trying to without compromising on the national or the international or the big news, they are giving that coverage as well as coverage to the little mohalla in the Thrissur Puram or whatever and all that, the little murder that took place and all that. Because also newspapers, they have realized that you can't be just a niche publication, that I am catering only to that, I am catering to. You have to cater to everybody, because you still don't know the reader. Because not able to define the reader is what we are seeing in Kerala now. So they are trying to be everything to everybody. I don't know how long this will continue, but as of now, we don't have a problem on that count. But dwindling circulation because of the migration is the major issue that Malayalam.
So this is significant that you're talking about increasing editions to and correlating that with the idea of hyperlocal news coverage. So we've talked about journalists, we've talked about audiences. If you go to the other side, and let's talk a little bit about the owners. Because very often they are the one who's orchestrating these kind of discussions here. Some of the regional media markets seem to be far more concentrated than other media markets, which means that there are a smaller number of newspapers which have a very large share of total circulation here. And on this one, I'll start with you, Samata, because you had some interesting insights about the nature of concentration and diffusion in the Bangla press here.
So we know that the biggest circulating Bangla newspaper is Anandabajar Potrika. However, that is not in terms of numbers. But Bortoman is the newspaper that is read more in villages. In North Bengal, Anandabajar comes third after Uttarbanga Sangbad, Bortoman, and then Anandabajar. So its concentration does not merely mean how many people read what, but also where do people read what kind of news. So Uttarbanga Sangbad's news caters it has news relevant to North Bengal, which they have historically thought is not something that other big newspapers in the state represent. So it was established, I think, in 86, and it's still been going strong, like very, very strong. And which also connects to your earlier question about the stringers. So they have stringers in every block. How is it possible? Because they are all primary school teachers. So they also, do the work of a stringer. And but at the same time, Bortoman has the maximum number of, I think, Zilla desks. And Anandabajar, then there was used to be something called Coalfield Times, and the Bengali version of that was called Poschim Bongo Sangbad, which is like the western part of West Bengal, both of which I think have stopped circulation, but there has never been any need to have a South Bengal newspaper, because all big newspapers are based in South Bengal and coming out of Kolkata and also catering to Howrah, Hooghly and the districts surrounding it. So I think when we are thinking about the question of concentration, we have to understand that it's not merely in numbers, but also like what Prasannan was saying, that it's both at times specific local requirements also contribute to larger readership of a certain kind of paper, which may not be anywhere near the bigger papers in terms of numbers. And so, for example, we've read, everybody knows about the religious tensions that happen in Murshidabad. So for the North Bengal newspapers, the bigger news is when people were displaced from Murshidabad, they went to the district of Malda, which is in North Bengal. So their coverage of the Murshidabad news would be from the perspective of what is happening in Malda now that these people have been displaced and have sought shelter in schools like that. And if I have like 1 minute to talk about this work, because we were talking about the precarious nature of media labor also, I was thinking about how so many digital editions in Bengal and perhaps others also, they have tied their salaries of regular employees with a sort of an incentive model. So you have perhaps 50 to 80% of is fixed salary, but the rest of it is incentivized. And if news journalism is also incentivized, and it's depending on how many clicks do you get or how many unique visitors or viewers you get in a month, and that is going to determine what you will get as an incentive in the rest of the year, then the nature of journalism and especially the nature of headlines changes significantly. So you are more prone to giving into clickbaitism. You are sensationalizing things. You have these small social media highlights which are promising something very sensational and raunchy at times, and you click on it, that is not the news. But you have reputed media houses almost forcing their journalists to be part of it by making their salary incentivized.
So the management is forcing this, not the editorial leadership.
The management is not telling them that you sensationalize. Okay. Editors do not say you sensationalize. But if you know that your salary is dependent on some form of sensationalization, what do you do?
But it's coming from somewhere on the top.
The salary structure is determined by the management.
Yeah. So that's important in terms of where these compulsions and incentives are kind of coming from. Yeah. And I mean, this of course leads to the other part. Maharashtra again. High concentration in terms of the top 3 newspapers have a very large share of the total circulation. Yeah. Hindi press again, Hindi,
there is a competition in all states.
Yeah, but if you take the top 2 in most cases,
3,
so I mean there is enough evidence to show that the top 2 in most cases, Gujarat, Maharashtra, we can go down to Andhra Pradesh and so on and so forth.
3 will cover everything.
And therefore that leads to the last sort of issue of this political ownership, where I think this is something which is there across the board there. And I think there are 2 points which one seems to be which have emerged over the years, 2 kind of sides of political ownership here. The one which you talk about more often is about political actors owning news outlets. That's the sort of traditional understanding here. And this goes back to pre-1947. I mean, the first Chief Minister of Orissa had a large newspaper here. The other phenomena which has emerged in more recent years are news actors entering the parliament. And because of that, then they end up sitting on subcommittees which are defining media and press policy. So I'm just wondering, what are the trends in terms of political ownership or this nexus between news actors and politicians? And I think Maharashtra is a very, very potent place to start the discussion from. Yeah.
Well, look, if you look at the history,
Hmm.
you have Lokmanya Tilak starting Kesari in Maharashtra, and Dr. Parulekar
Yes.
starting Sakal in 1932. I mean, these are the major dailies
Yeah.
from Maharashtra. Later on came Maharashtra Times and Lok Satta, which are Mumbai-based, elite newspapers actually. But the official newspapers were only two at that time. But as the days go on, as the years went on, the political influence was more important. You see, creating a public opinion in favor of you was very important. So therefore, the Golden Hen was a newspaper. And if you look at Maharashtra, you will see that political leader like Balasaheb Thackeray, who started Samna. Before that, he was having a magazine called Marmik, and devoted to caricatures and articles also, you see. Then you have a person like Vilas Deshmukh, who was a former chief minister of Maharashtra, but started his own newspaper in his own area, Marathwada.
But relatively smaller in
Relatively
terms
smaller
of.
one was
I'm talking about the large ones.
Large one, I'll
yeah,
tell you.
Yeah.
And now large one was Jawaharlal Darada's Lokmat.
Yeah.
That is the biggest newspaper, of course, and they started with a Marathi daily, then spread into Hindi, then they went to English also, like Lokmat Times. So they tried to capture the audience and the readership of three languages. Now if you come to Sakal, you'll find that we have got Sakal Times from Pune, catering to the English speaking people or the younger people actually, see. Then we have got Gomantak Times in Goa, plus the language papers are there. And as I told you earlier also that the Pawar family was there at the time also. And then the question was that most of the newspapers were owned by Marwadis, which means Jain, Times of India, Darada, Lokmat, you see, Goenka, Indian Express, you see. None of the newspaper was in the hands of Maratha or Maharashtrians actually, you see. So therefore it was thought that at least one newspaper, which is a popular one, why not try? And as I told you earlier, that the circulation when he took over or the Pawar people took over was only 1.45 lakh. And if his influence was there in the newspaper for all the time, our people or the readers in Pune would not have accepted it actually. See. So over the years, most important thing was that Lok Satta and Maharashtra Times papers coming out from Mumbai. So the political people would like to see themselves in a bigger paper, like Lok Satta, like Maharashtra Times, you see. So they would concentrate their interviews, their news, planting of news in the bigger papers, you see, so that they can reap some harvest from there. You see. Now our paper, which is published in Pune, is all Brahminical kind of a fold actually. In Pune, if you look at the population, is more conservative, Brahminical, and always analyzing the newspaper, what it is publishing. Therefore, if you publish more and more of a political leader, the readers will not read it. So you have to balance all the time that whether you are giving a more publicity to a politician or more publicity to a news, basically, you see. And that news, which is a balanced news, basically, you see. So that was a dilemma which actually was solved over the years. We had very good editors in Sakal. We had an editor who was a Dalit editor. No paper has in Maharashtra tried an editor who was a chief editor of Sakal was Dalit. Now, if you look at the combination of the caste in Maharashtra, most of the papers had the Brahmins as the editors for a long time. The correspondents and the reporters also would belong to most of them. Then came Marathas. Marathas were there, and they slowly, Marathas started picking up. They started owning the newspapers, and then Jains. So Jain, Brahmins, Marathas, these are the major castes which are owning newspaper and also getting the benefits out of it. So if you look at that, I told you about Balasaheb Thackeray, then Ms. Pawar, then Jawaharlal Dardas, Vilas Deshmukh. If you look at Orissa, Tathagat Satpathy is there. He has got his own newspaper. And like that, every state of India has one or two politicians who have their newspapers in their own languages.
Yeah, I mean, this is a phenomenon, right? I mean, this phenomenon, of course, has grown
exponentially
because of television. It's much more stronger in television if you see it. And I think it's important that you brought about the caste issue and not purely in terms of the issue of, looking at politicians as a homogeneous kind of entity. So in a sense, what you're saying is that newspapers are essentially now representing interest groups. I mean, that seems to be the argument which seems to be emerging. And therefore the question to me, and I'll put this to Mr. Nath, that how do you think newspapers which are not owned by politicians respond to an increasing political ownership in the press?
I think it will be very difficult for any newspaper, especially, not to be connected with political party or the or politics, because most of the newspapers are surviving on government advertising, and government advertising doesn't come free unless and until you toe the line of the party in power, whether in center or in the state. You cannot survive, and you cannot sell your newspaper at the low price at which we are now accustomed. So everyone is aligned to one party or the other. Maybe the politician is owning the newspaper, or maybe he is not owning the newspaper. Owning of the newspaper doesn't mean, if a politician owns the newspaper, doesn't mean that he can be a successful newspaper publisher. Because there you need acquaintanceship of an industrialist. To publish a newspaper is not an easy task. There are hundreds of steps to be taken, from collecting the news to deliver the copy to the reader. So it is not possible for a pure politician to do it. He will have to have a machinery, and generally they fail. I mean, only politicians, even if Tathagat has a newspaper, but it is not number one newspaper. It is not number one. And
the question therefore would be, and I'll push that to
then member of parliament.
Yeah, so that's a sort of two-way flow which is happening, and I'll put this to sort of Mahtab, just to sort of wind this up, is that this phenomena has not yet taken over in the online space, of large political entities owning or commanding a large amount of online audiences. The online audiences are still commanded by the traditional newspapers. And I'm therefore wondering, we talk about this new forms of journalism such as podcasting, video reels, and so on and so forth. Are they sustainable? And I mean sustainable not just financially, but also politically, given the recent discussion.
I'm not sure about that, and also we often talk about alternative media, but look at the reach of alternative media and then compare it with the say traditional media. Even today, when we talk about digital media or the online media, it is dominated by traditional media, be it India Times or the thing. So that is traditional media is alternative media is just a subset or the small set of the small part of the pie.
Are they sustainable in themselves?
Not really. Not in my. They might look very sustainable from a distance, but from my own say maybe the experience or from what I have heard and read that it is not. Most of them are struggling. If we talk about podcasting, I mean, it is still, I mean, a nascent stage in India. I mean, there was an effort made there was a platform, multilingual platform called Suno India. It was started as long as they had funding from IP, AMSF and other places. It survived, but it could not go much. And that is not functioning. Of course, the traditional media houses has started podcasting, be it Aaj Tak or other publications. So that is not. Even the alternative media in terms of YouTube, which we keep talking about and we think that is a big thing. If you look at the people who are behind these platforms, are essentially people who were big, I mean, who were already established names. And that's why, I mean, riding on that capital, they have been able to manage subscription and sustain thing. But those are not media setups to say. Those are not providing, say, jobs to many people. These are very small groups. I mean, most of the people who left, say, NDTV or other publications, media houses, they are running small media houses, and they are facing all sort of challenges. And that's also because they are essentially journalists. They have been journalists, they have been reporters, they have been anchors, not on the management side. But now they have to do management thing also. The ownership wala kaam bhi. So that is the thing. So I'm not sure. I mean, introductorily, I can say that it's not really very, and that's why more than often you will hear veteran journalists and YouTubers, or say those who are forced to start their own YouTube channels, saying don't study journalism, don't come to journalism. That we have been hearing. So that is the case. There are two other points I wanted to add earlier, but one thing about this ownership, about Urdu media houses. So if you look at the two most circulated Urdu newspapers, or with multiple editions, they are not Muslim managed. The Inqilab newspaper, which has 10 plus editions published from different parts of North India, I would say, and plus Bombay, Maharashtra, it is owned and managed by Dainik Jagran Group. And there is one can see what is being published in Dainik Jagran and what is being published in Inqilab. So that is another story. Second is Rashtriya Sahara Group. Again, it's not and there are smaller publications. So that thing about politicians entering into media and media people entering, that is also the case of Urdu. One can name many people like Shahid Siddiqui, people like Nadeem, Nadeemul Haq from West Bengal, and other people. So Hamim Afzal, for that matter, Congress. So many people. So that is. Then another thing is about stringers. I think stringers are very important. We all because not that they are targeted by state and non-state actors. If you look at the recent data, which is 2023 data, 5 journalists were killed in India, and 220 journalists were targeted across India. If you do a classification or kind of analyze it, you will find most of the people who were targeted were stringers, who were based in small cities, small towns kind of thing. The biggest problem they face, I mean, apart from state and non-state actors, they face from journalist fraternity, their own fraternity, as well as the newspapers they are, or the media organizations they are representative. And this we saw very recently in the case of Mukesh Chandrakar, who was killed in Chhattisgarh. A newspaper like Indian Express kept writing Mukesh Chandrakar as YouTuber, which is not the which is not the case. He had a body of work to show that he was a journalist. Once he was not able to do stories or the kind of stories he wanted to do, he was forced to start a YouTube channel called Bastar Junction. So that is, and then once they are targeted, media organization they represent or they report for, they don't stand up, they don't be with them. And we have seen this in Chhattisgarh, not in just in conflict zones, but other places also. And the role of stingers or quote-unquote independent journalists have increased over a period of time because there have been layoffs and layoffs. And most of the media organizations, and especially the quote-unquote alternative media organizations, are surviving on stringers, be in Kashmir, be in Assam and other places. So this is something I wanted to
Okay,
add.
yeah. I think it's time we could try and just open it a bit to the audiences. If there are any comments or questions, if there are specific questions, you could address them to specific people. And do please introduce yourself for everybody here. Yeah. Please.
My name is Srinivasan. I retired from the Indo business line. I'd like to, go back to the. Okay. I'd like to go back to the question you posed to the panel at the start of the discussion, Vibodh. The defining trait. And I was intrigued that none of the panelists actually mentioned the one defining trait which I see is the biggest challenge also faced by media, irrespective of language or size, which is the challenge of credibility, right? Consumption of traditional media or mainstream media is falling for a number of reasons, many of which were touched upon by the panel, but also principally because they're increasingly seen as irrelevant. They do not shape opinion or influence people that much anymore. And in that sense, their weight, which used to be much more in favor of the traditional media, today most average consumers of information do not differentiate between a social media influencer and a traditional journalist. So they're source agnostic in that sense. And that's largely because there has been a sharp decline in the credibility which the traditional media carries. And how has that impacted the regional media? That is one question. There is a related question, which is that if a lot of the discussion was, of course, related to print, which is what I spent my career in, but digital is radically different. And one of the biggest differentiators is that it has much lower entry barrier. So, it's easier to start a digital outlet compared to starting a print operation of any size. The costs are radically different, right? But the reach is potentially all of the internet, right? But you still do not have that happening. So why is it that the regional media has not been able to capitalize on the digital revolution and particularly be able to attract the younger audience who are actually digital natives. In fact, I would say that about 40% of the population of the country was born after 3G internet came to the country. It's that young. And why is it that they've not been able to sort of reach that audience?
No, there are two different questions. One is on credibility across the board, and the other question is the other question is about technology adoption.
That's not the question.
That's not the. So two questions: credibility across the board and digital adoption. Yeah. Would you want to have a look at the credibility part?
I will actually. I
Yeah.
don't think, if I got you right, I do not think that because traditional print media has become less credible, that is why people have become source agnostic. It is the way we consume news, like you said, has completely changed. And I would go so far as to say that it is going to change even more. The only reason why it hasn't changed yet and people still read things, at least digitally, is because our internet is not limitless, and also because there are patches where there is no internet. For example, if somebody is traveling on a local train and traveling from one place to the other, she is not going to have limitless internet or uninterrupted internet connectivity. It is easier to reach a web page than to listen to a podcast or to listen to a YouTube video or watch a YouTube video. But it is far more easier to see an Instagram or a Facebook reel, which is shorter in duration and takes much less data. And I would think that the only reason why the traditional media, at least in digital form, is holding its own is simply because there is still a barrier over how much internet we can consume in a day, because of tariff plans, all of which have gone up. People are becoming poorer, and also there are internet blind spots all over our country. Can I add one small thing about this? Why the digital adoption has not exploded? It has exploded. There are, for example, in Bangla, there are at least 8 to 9 digital news outlets which are self-sustaining, but they all either belong to big television channels, so they are drawing on them, or they belong to established media houses and they are drawing on them. Having said that, it's so much more labor intensive to keep a digital news platform afloat, because nowadays like Ajkal or Shongvad Pratidin or even Hindustan Times Digital and Anandabazar Digital, they produce 170 to 200 stories every day, which is, what kind of labor does it require? What infrastructure does it require? And do we have that? Is there that kind of influence, money going into that? There isn't. So if there were that kind of money going into building this digital space, it would, of course, get better. Till we have seamless connectivity, then maybe everybody will only watch reels. So.
Okay, I think entry barriers are coming down, but that does not lead to aspects of revenues going up. And I think that's where the big shift has happened in the yeah. Yeah. There's one here. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right? It's a challenge faced by all.
Or there are other forms.
Have the same problem. Magazines have the same problem. Digital has the same problem. But you pay when you see value. That's what I meant by a crisis of credibility as well. That they don't see the value, which is why it's so difficult for anybody to build that subscriber base.
Yeah. Mr. Naik, you had something
Can
point
I
on
just
this?
add
then
something to
yeah.
this, please?
Just a short.
We have
Yeah.
a question from
Very
here, and
short
you have a
answer.
question.
Can I just add a bit to this?
Okay.
I just read somewhere that the viewership of the television media is coming down because people suspect their credibility these days, then they're shifting to the digital media instead. Is this correct? And to what extent is this?
Well, to both of you, I think I agree with both of you of the credibility of newspapers or newspaper man, if you look at it.
And broadcast news also.
Broadcast news also. I think I mentioned earlier that the trend started after 2010, because when the people started indulging in the paid news, the readership started looking differently to the news, to the correspondents, then to the political leaders and the owners of newspapers. Actually, when they started looking at it, and then they found that they are getting rich at the cost of the readers. So therefore, I think that that particular thing started after that, and credibility really suffered actually. Even now also credibility is suffering, as you just mentioned, Martwal, that you cannot say that now some of the channels are aligned to some party.
Yeah.
We call them Godi media. Some of them maybe others also at one time when Congress was in power for 40 years in India, there were correspondents who were aligned to Congress party also, you see. And also now we find more and more going towards power, you see. I mean, this trend was there earlier also, trend is today also. Therefore, these kind of trends are creating a problem of credibility. So for the news is concerned, whether it is a visual media or a print media. Next thing is that digital revolution, as internet editions of, she mentioned about internet editions of newspapers now. There are hundreds and thousands of bloggers now in various languages writing every day, you see. And the newspapers, print media want to reach to the Indian diaspora. And Indian diaspora is very big outside. So they reach through their blogs, through their internet edition. And there is a lot of response from that also, is that people are getting actually. So the digital revolution is taking place, as she also said, that there are a lot of tremendous responses there. And I think as the days and as the years go on, more and more people will turn to digital kind of a media, whether it is the visual media or internet media or the podcasts like that. That will be there, and the person who gives the most, as he said about YouTubers actually, though they may be very few YouTubers, but they have established a credibility of their own. We have the examples right now, and there are those who did not fall in line with the establishments. They started their own, and they were established people actually.
I think the point which he was trying to make is that the credibility was not established on that platform. It was established somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that value was sort of transferred, in many cases successfully, in many cases unsuccessfully. Mr. Nath, you had a comment on this.
I have a comment on that. The credibility depends on the investigative journalism which the publication is adopting or the channel is adopting. Now, it requires a lot of investment for investigative journalism, which people are not ready to do. No newspaper has recently broken any explosive news about anything. Then there is another thing, another reason for that. That is the narrative which is going on for last almost 2 decades about one kind of religious thought has overpowered all correspondents also, newspapers also, editors also, and most importantly their owners. So where will you get the credibility? Where will you, what will you investigate when you are on the side of the power? Credibility means that you investigate against the power. If you do not investigate against the power, you will not get the required credibility. That is what is the meaning of the credibility. So that is my point.
Let's take the next round of questions all together and then try and sort of wrap it up on that. There's a question here, and there was a hand. Let's take all the questions, at least listen to the questions, and then maybe we can think over the answers at another point of time.
Okay, my name is Rakesh Bhattabyal. I am a historian but teach media history in JNU. We started a new center around 2011. We had a committee, Romila Thapar and others got together in social sciences and they thought that media is going through tremendous changes, a lot of problems that we all discussed. So there should be a center which should discuss this in social sciences. So I was asked to mobilize the center. We started the center. So we got people from economics, sociology, history, and they had a center going in Jamia. They have trained. We never wanted to have an MA program competing with other center. But increasingly, after the third batch of PhD, and my own 15 PhDs, somebody worked on Kannada medium, what are the problems, Bangla, Hindi, every media. What are the problems, issues, readership? Now the pressure was that you have to have MA program in communication. Now those who came through communication and journalism do not have these problems that you cited. Their problem is getting what Mahtab was talking about, getting a job. So we resisted having an MA program. We are going to have it now because new education policy we have to develop, Vikasit Bharat and all these things we have to have. So what I'm indicating is that we produce these students and all of them have gone back to their original disciplines, sociology, English and all. They didn't get a job in any media. Yesterday, one of my students who studied a fantastic PhD in Urdu medium, what are the problems? He was demoted in the history department in Kyonjhar University because he did not have a PhD in history, but rather media studies. So that is a problem that I'm doing, institutional problem. The second is much more related to what discussed here, is the periodicals. I grew up with Delhi Press, Champak, Mukta, Sarita, and I graduated the year you stopped Caravan, 88 or 87, 88, 89. So what happened? Because I grew up with a radical thought. Every magazine of yours would carry a caption, Tulsi Das. Remember, I won't say the next line, okay? Tulsi Das, Hindu Samaj ke Mahan Patbhrashtak. And so that's a commitment that the family had to the social reform. Now, what is the issue today? Because I don't find any of my social relations reading any Hindi magazine. I was a Bengali, I was reading all Delhi Press magazine, grew up. But now when I go to my language or any other language, I don't see them reading any magazine. Now, so periodicals have actually, because I also make an argument that stoppage of, what is it called? Sarika? No.
Sarita.
Not Sarita, the
Sarika
Times of India.
Sarika.
What is the intellectual magazine? Dinman. I said stoppage of Dinman has actually killed a large number of intellectual space in northern India. Every UP, Bihar, that was an intellectual forum. So what has happened, if you can answer that, where the Hindi or Hindi particularly, magazines or periodicals did not raise up to the discourses that is happening. Caravan you brought out and it's a big contribution now, because it is opening up. But what happened to your Hindi periodicals?
Our Hindi periodicals continue to give that kind of material which was our trademark. Still.
So
Sarita is still there.
Sarita
is still there. My issue is that who can read it? I mean,
is it a catch-22 situation or
no.
He's insisting throughout the last 1.5 hours that it's not really a supply problem.
It is the problem of the consumption that they do not know Hindi.
And that's very well taken. There were some more
I mean, that has happened with Desh also.
We just take
I mean, but don't forget that happened with Desh. What is the position of Desh?
Questions here. We'll take all the questions and then we'll try and see what we can do with them. Yes, please. Sir, introduce yourself and could you be short, please?
My name is M.B. Chandar. 10 years down the line, how many regional papers is going to survive or shut their shops?
Important.
And next, what is the political fate, political ownership you discussed? What is the political fate of National Herald heading towards? It also publishes in Hindi and Urdu also.
Yes.
Weekly, I suppose. Earlier it used to be daily also. Could you elaborate on that?
Your political ownership and speculation on the future. Any other? Yeah, you had something to add to that? Yeah, you had. I think the gentleman there.
No, I just.
Then I'll come there.
Yeah, since there's a very little time left, but very quickly, I agree on basically taking off from Srini's point. Actually, there is dearth of reliance on printed or even on television news, mainly because they are suspect. Let's face it. I'll give you the example. And there are alternate media which is coming up in a big way, and they are becoming very successful. In India, there are a number of them who have become Ashutosh, etc. Though they also say that they have financial difficulties. I'll give you the example of two Bangladeshi ladies. One is in New York and one is in London. Both of them are running their own channels, YouTube channels. I have appeared on them for a couple of times, which is why I know. One lady who's in London has had 1.7 lakh 1.75 crore hits on her channel till date, and it's just 1 month old. So there is an alternate media and it is waiting to take over, and the only problem is we who are in the traditional media, we are scared that they will not maintain certain standards, etc., etc. But we don't know, they might actually do it better than us.
That's a very optimistic one. Thank you for that. There was very quickly introduce yourself and the question, please. Sir.
I'm not a journalist. I'm an MBA, and I'm a news consumer. And since the time I've been consuming news. I started watching TV, NDTV, when it used to come Friday evenings. Pranay Roy himself used to host that show, World This Week something. World This Week, yeah. And page-to-page newspaper reading, I've been doing it since early 90s. Newspaper and TV. These guys, most of these guys have what? ANI, PTI, and various accreditations. They have a press card. They are accredited multiple places. That's why they generate news. That's why that gives them a license to create news. Let's talk about alternate media. We don't even know they're journalists or not. One, we don't even know they've studied law or journalism, and they've been through that framework to become journalists. They're citizen journalists from what we understand. They are, every one of us, most of us, all of us are citizen journalists for that matter. Where is that question of credibility? We want to trust these guys who may not have studied journalism, who don't have a license to create news. And then we question the mainstream media, print, broadcast. Why? Where is this question of credibility? I want to ask. I want to get that clarification. And sir, Mr. Nath, we want to investigate power. That's not the right way to put it. I'm sorry. We don't investigate power. We investigate the state of matter. We investigate the state of the nation. State of the matter, not power.
Okay, that's a fine distinction.
It has to be the final.
We have to now just. So we are right now just collecting questions for the next dialogue, actually.
Just to
I can make that clear, right? Yeah.
Now, I want to know from the regional press, has sensationalism in television, how has it impacted the editorial decisions and the quality of reporting in regional media? It has done so in the national media, of course. How is the regional media affected? Because we were all told to cook up, even in big newspapers, cook up what they call sexy stories. This is a term from the evening conference in our own paper, which you and I have heard. So we were told to cook up these page one stories, not while you were there. No, not from you.
Well, there's been one argument, which especially by bilingual TV channels who have argued that the sensationalism actually came from the non-English media. And because they were doing quote-unquote well, it then spilled over into the Anglophone media. I'm not saying that's the right argument. I'm just saying this is the other argument.
My this thing is that the television media is now falling over each other in creating sensation.
Yeah.
Because every hour they have to give something, We used to have it in our newspaper times only once in a day because the paper used to come out the next morning. Here, television channels are in competition with each other. So that's what I want to know. How is it affecting the regional media? I think that's a relevant question.
Anybody wants to have a go at that?
It's the same.
Yeah.
It is the same.
It's not
the same.
Yeah.
And also something I wanted to say which I couldn't is that ultimately some 50% of the sensationalism is also targeting women. And that the same thing is happening in regional newsrooms as well as digital platforms as well as television channels. From the language of journalism, using words like, so in Bengali, if they want to say some truth was uncovered, they will say be abru, so which is, somebody who lost her shame. And these are regular journalistic words. And so more and more sensationalization in different platforms is also more and more difficult to be a woman in modern India. Yeah.
What is interesting in what you're saying is that despite sensationalism, the argument was if you are sensational, you'll sell. News outlets are losing money in broadcasting for close to 10 years there. So this argument of you need to be quick and sensational so that you'll actually get revenues, that argument actually is a false argument. And I think many people are actually falling for that.
Can I just have a very quick last thought because nobody has to answer this. Okay, it's just that we didn't talk about, we didn't talk about money at all in this discussion, which is actually at the center of this discussion, right? And I find it counterintuitive that at a time when our economic growth is now being primarily powered by consumption outside the big metros, tier 2, tier 3, rural consumption, without keeping our GDP numbers afloat, those markets which the regional media caters to are not able to monetize, right? Makers of things and sellers of services are monetizing it, but media has not been able to. So it's a question for the media to look at.
That has already been said.
So
Thank you very much. Thank you
lots-
very much.
lots of interesting
everybody for
insights
here,
there.
especially those who sort of stayed on and dug in their heels. on
Many
this.
thanks to everybody, a wonderful audience, and of course our wonderful panelists and we both for moderating it so expertly, and especially taking time out on such a heavy news day. Thank you to everyone, and thanks IIC for letting us organize this. This is in fact organized in association with the Indian International Center. So thank you and good night.
Yeah.